Today, our topic is on social work leadership and innovation, creating the change you wish to see with Kyrene Darko. Kyrene is a Frontline Fellow, having completed one of our leadership programs and our innovation program, and is the creator of the Social Work Leaders podcast. So I'll hand over to you, Kyrene, for today's presentation.
Thank you, Ross. Yes, thank you. So today we're going to be speaking about leadership and innovation in social work. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity actually to speak about some topics that I'm really passionate about. Marie, okay to move on to the next slide, please? So these are just the things that we're going to talk about today. So just focusing a little bit on who I am, helping you to understand me a little bit more. And then moving on to think about leadership in social work and what it means to be a leader in social work. And then think a little bit about innovation in social work and what it means to innovate in social work. And then we'll move on for me to share some of my top tips around leadership and innovation. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. Thank you. So who am I? As Ross said at the beginning, my name's Kyrene Darko. I'm a qualified social worker. I qualified in 2011. And at the point of qualifying, even before qualifying, I guess I was always quite clear in my mind that I wanted to be a child protection social worker. I always planned to work within children's services and within child protection roles. And I think that comes from the fact that I am and I have always been really passionate about children, children just having safe, happy childhoods, having the best opportunities available to them. So since qualifying, that has predominantly been my journey. Over the years I've practiced, I've been a social worker in assessment teams and child protection teams. I've been a manager in both assessment teams and child protection teams too. And I've worked within quality assurance roles. And then currently I'm a child protection conference chair. And what that is I chair child protection conferences, make decisions about child protection plans for children. And part of that role is in quality assuring practice and quality assuring plans for children. And it's a role I really enjoy. And alongside that, I do some independent social work. So I'm really keen to keep in practice. So I still do parenting assessments for children and families. At the moment, specifically Parent Assess, which are parenting assessments specifically for parents with learning difficulties or disabilities. And that's an opportunity for me to keep, I guess, in touch with practice whilst I'm not on the front line in the same way I was before. And then I am the creator of the Social Work Leaders podcast, which I'll talk about in a bit more, and the creator of an ebook from earlier this year, which is called A Guide to Your First 4 Weeks as a Social Work Manager. The next slide, please. So just thinking about leadership and innovation in social work, and firstly thinking about my passion for leadership in social work. So I'm passionate about leadership in social work for so many reasons. And I think leadership in social work is something that we're often taught, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, that leadership's something you achieve when you reach a certain point in your career. And actually, for years, that's something I believed and felt as well. And I'd never thought of myself as a leader for a long time, even when I was in management roles. And I think that that's probably the case for many social workers and something many social workers that can relate to. But in the last 5 years, I've really come to understand that leadership is not just about a title, it's about a way of being, it's an action, it really is a doing word. I'm really passionate about leadership in social work because I think for social workers it's important that we all know that we can and we should be thinking about ourselves as leaders from the moment we start our journeys as social workers, because the skills that make good leaders are the skills that make good social workers. And when I think about leadership, it's about being someone that inspires people to be able to make changes and strides in their own lives. It's about empowering people to be able to make positive choices and creating a vision. And really, those are all the things that leaders do. And then I had the opportunity to do which was called the First Line program with Frontline back in 2022 now, which was really positive because it gave me the opportunity to really develop and have more confidence within my um, own leadership skills and understand really what that meant for me to be a leader. Um, I also think, which really links nicely into innovation, but leadership in social work is about innovation because being a leader in social work is about thinking outside of the box. It's about recognizing the need of the child, the adult, the family you're working with, and looking at how you can create something or develop something to have an impact for that family, which really leads me on to my passion for innovation in social work. So for me, I've always been someone who's enjoys thinking of new ways of working and new ways of doing things. For years of experience, I've obviously learned that social work isn't a one size fits all model. So I've always been quite keen and quite interested to look at how we can innovate and develop our practice to make sure it fits the families that we're working with. And I think for social workers and for me for a long time, the idea of innovation was very scary. It's not something that social workers do. We're really clear, these are the policies, these are procedures. And whilst I love policies and procedures and they're really important, there's absolutely a space for innovation and looking at how we can develop something new to fit the families we work with and also to fit social workers. Because I really feel passionate that social workers, we are the experts in social work and we are the right people to create the changes that we want to see. I think we know and we often say that service users are the experts in their own experiences, and that's absolutely right. And I think as social workers, we also need to believe that we are the experts in social work too, and how we need to lead and be bold. So in 2022 as well, I think it was shortly after the First Line program, I had the opportunity to do the innovation program through Frontline as well. And I've always been interested in innovation and I've had a lot of innovative ideas over the years relating to social work. But I guess there was a lot of starting and stopping, lots of ideas, not really knowing how to move forward. And I'm interested in a lot of things, but equally, leadership is one of my areas of passion. So I brainstormed and played around with many ideas over the years about, I guess, what I wanted to create or innovate really for social workers. And what became clear for me is that in terms of being a leader, it is a way of being, but also it's about knowledge and education. And for social workers and how busy we are, whilst it's not great, accessing training, accessing further education sometimes can be put on the back burner, but it really shouldn't be a barrier for us being able to develop and lead. So in 2022, I launched the Social Work Podcast, Social Work Leaders Podcast. And it's a podcast that is available on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And it's a podcast for social workers by myself, a social worker. It's a mixture of solo episodes and guest episodes, and it's speaking to social workers on various different levels, talking about their journeys, talking about their experiences, and what social work leadership means to them. And when I talk about social work leadership, the episodes are not with they're with social workers at various levels of their profession. So I've had interviews with newly qualified social workers, with student social workers, with very experienced social workers, senior social workers, managers, so independent social workers. So a real variety of voices. And it's been fantastic for my own learning. And I've also had lots of feedback from many social workers who have found it to be a fantastic way for them to be able to learn, to be inspired, and think about their own journey. I also do some solo episodes on there as well, which is really about professional development and supporting social workers in their leadership journey. I then started to think a little bit more about what else I could do because I think I became quite clear and I've become quite clear that my interest is around supporting social workers to become successful leaders. And then at the beginning of the year, I created an ebook, which is called A Guide to Your First 4 Weeks as a new social work manager. So it's an ebook guide for social workers who are new into management roles or thinking about going into management roles. And it gives them top tips on the things that they should do or advise they do, based on what I've learned over the years that I think are crucial when you're stepping into that stage. So for me, innovation and leadership have been really closely linked. And my innovations have been about creating the things that either I wish I had and didn't have, or that I did have and that I felt were fantastic and key in my own social work journey. And therefore, I've felt a need to share with others. And then I've just captured some quotes here, really, that I really like. So the key to successful leadership is influence and authority. And I love that because I think for me, and I don't think I'll be alone in saying that, but for years, in my mind, leadership was about authority. It was about the position you were in, the title. But I think sometimes we mix up management and leadership. Management can very much be and feel like authority, and leadership, of course, there's elements of that within there, but it's really different. It's about influence as well. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. Leadership is not a position or title, it's an action and example. And then I really like the last one: good leaders develop ideas, good leaders develop people, the best leaders develop new leaders. And I really like that quote because it just confirms and serves as a reminder about how closely leadership and innovation are linked, because it speaks about good leaders developing ideas, which is innovation. The next slide, please. So I've got 3 main top tips to share today, and this is for anyone who is on a leadership journey, on an innovation journey, or thinking about going into any of those journeys. So the first top tip is specifically around innovation, I would say, and it's identify a problem before identifying the solution. And that's a really key thing. And as I said, the innovation program for me was fantastic. I learned so much on it, but whilst it might feel quite basic to some, this was one of the biggest takeaways for me, sorry. And I don't know whether it's in terms of being a social worker or my personality type. I'm very much a solution focused person. I like solution focused practice. However, when it comes to innovation, it's really important to start by taking the time to identify what the problem is. So understanding what is the problem that you're actually trying to solve here. Because many of us have solutions about what we think needs to happen, but we just need to be really clear that it's actually solving the problem we've identified. And like I said earlier on, I've had lots of innovation programs, ideas, over the years that haven't been as successful as I would have hoped. But on reflection and through actually doing the innovation program with Frontline, what was really clear is that my focus had been solely on the solution without actually unpicking the problem and understanding whether it's, my solution is a good fit for the problem. So that is my first top tip. The second one for me is about seeking opportunities for coaching, training, and mentorship. I can't stress to you how much coaching and mentoring has helped me on my innovation journey, on my leadership journey, whether it's been around having a sounding board, whether it's having someone who isn't emotionally connected to the things that I'm talking about or experiencing. Having a coach or a mentor has been just key for me. And I think sometimes we don't always know that we can access that at any level. So Frontline do or did opportunities for coaching for fellows, which I've been able to access, which was fantastic. And through some of the programs, I've had mentoring and coaching as well. Also, if you're a social worker registered with BASWA, you can access coaching through them as well. Or even with mentoring, if you have a more experienced social worker in your team, you can always ask them to see if they're willing to mentor you as well. It's about really just grabbing and taking opportunities to learn from others that might know more about a particular topic than you do. And then my final tip is feel the fear and do it anyway. Um, I mean, for anyone who hasn't read this book, I would recommend it. It's a really good book, but for me, it's more about the message. Um, because I think sometimes we're too scared to take the leap into doing something different. But I just believe that if you really believe that what you're doing or what you wish to do is going to serve others in a positive way, I would just encourage you to feel the fear and do it anyway. Because if we, as the social workers in the profession, aren't going to try and make a change, why would anyone else try and make a change for us? So, those are my 3 tips. And then the last slide is just about whether you want to get in touch and learn anything more. I've left the QR code there, which will take you through to my link tree, which has the podcast on there. I've got a mailing list. You can access the ebook on there as well. And I've also shared my email address, the swmentor at gmail.com, because actually I'm really keen for to always speak to social workers. So if there's anyone listening and you'd be keen to come on the podcast and talk about your own social work journey, to talk about anything exciting that you're doing within the profession at the moment, feel free, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. So my email's there. And yeah, everything else is on there. I'm on LinkedIn. And yeah, as I said, everything else is on that QR code. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kyrene. It's really interesting to hear your kind of passion for leadership come through. If anyone does have any questions, please post them in the chat and I can put them to Kyrene. But I just had a couple of follow-up things that I thought might be interesting to discuss. And the first, I suppose, was just related to, I suppose, your motivation and energy. What I sometimes see is that, like, as you said, people have ideas, but then it's about how do they take those ideas and drive that forward with motivation to maybe achieve what you've achieved. And you've obviously set some of the, things that you feel have been set. But I'm just wondering for you, like, how do you maintain that level of motivation?
I think for me, it's been around shifting my mindset. So I'm someone who, initially I really struggled with motivation because especially having a busy day job, the motivation to keep going, especially when you're not feeling like you're seeing any success was really difficult. But what I've just learned over time is actually small strides. Some days I've made some great strides, got lots of amazing feedback, but sometimes there's just been no progress. And just being really patient and acknowledging that actually it's a journey. And if it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, that I just need to acknowledge that actually it's going to take time. There are going to be days where it doesn't feel like I've achieved anything, and just really being patient with that. But also, and I recognize that, being able to attend some of the programs has really benefited me, but connecting with like-minded people, I've been able to connect with other people who either have similar, or have been on similar innovation journeys or leadership journeys, and we're able to have those conversations and connect with each other when things are getting really difficult, and when things are really good. So that's been another source of motivation for me.
So kind of networking with like-minded individuals and kind of keeping that passion and energy for different projects, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really interesting to think about that. How have you coped with any setbacks you've had then in terms of, you said that it's kind of almost you've got to have a level of patience, but I would imagine to kind of, to get a podcast and to get the book, like there must have been times where you've had setbacks. How have you overcome and worked through those?
That's been really difficult at times as well. And it can be because, especially if you believe in an idea, I mean, sometimes automatically you think that everybody should believe in that idea. And there have been times in the past where a setback has been enough for me to just say, I'm giving up. Maybe this isn't the right way to go. But actually, what I now do is just use that setback as an opportunity to take a step back and relook at it. Actually, if the message I'm trying to share isn't reaching others in the same way, I need to try and take a step back and understand why, and just really understanding the purpose. This is not about me, it's about those that I'm trying to do this for. And actually, if the message isn't reaching them, I do need to take a step back and reevaluate what I'm doing. So I'm trying to see setbacks now more as, I guess, an opportunity to try and do something different rather than an indication that it's not going to work.
Yeah, so to almost kind of take that, the positives from arguably a negative situation and trying to kind of, rework those into how can you go again? How can you maybe present things differently or target
Differently.
differently? Okay, right, that sounds really interesting.
Absolutely.
Um, when you talked about kind of leadership and that kind of idea that it's not necessarily linked to authority or to a position or a title, I'm just curious as to what you might say to people that are watching in terms of navigating their experience if they are not experiencing like good management or good leadership, for example. Because I think, certainly what I've seen and experienced is if you don't have good leadership around you, then perhaps the energy, creativity that you want to hold can be difficult to maintain. So just wondering if you had any thoughts around navigating that space.
Yeah, that is a really difficult space to be in, absolutely. And I guess what my advice, I've got, I guess, so many things I could think about and say for that question, but I guess the key thing is that yes, whilst you will have a line manager, looking outside of your immediate network to see who else you can speak to or who else that you can kind of have those opportunities with is really important. And it kind of links into that mentoring or coaching that I mentioned, because not everybody is going to understand your innovations. Not everyone is going to understand your journey, but seeing if you can link in with a mentor or a coach outside of your direct line management can sometimes be incredibly helpful.
So having kind of an external perspective that is a safe space, perhaps for you to, you know, talk through things, to hear different perspectives of experience, that's been powerful for you.
Absolutely. But also, I would say, trying to have that conversation with your manager, because I know that the reality is, especially when it comes to innovation, I think it's still, my view is that it's still quite new in the social work space. And I know definitely when I um, started thinking about innovation, I felt quite uncomfortable talking about it because I felt, people aren't going to understand me. They're probably going to think, how's this impacting your day job? Is there a conflict of interest? There was all of that thinking, and that was a barrier for me in sharing that with other people and actually assuming that they wouldn't understand. But actually, when I did discuss it with my manager, she was incredibly supportive, incredibly understanding. And while she may not have completely understood it, seeing my passion in it was enough for her to really run with it. I know that's not going to be with everyone, it's not going to be everyone's experience, but I would say actually there's no harm in just trying to have that open conversation with your manager and see whether actually you get a different outcome to what you'd expect.
Great, thank you. And we've got a question that's come through from Chantel. So I think it's quite an interesting one, actually. How do you navigate imposter syndrome when you move into a leadership role? I heard you say that you didn't refer to yourself as a leader at points when you were in a leadership role. How did you sit with these emotions whilst leading others?
Yeah, really interesting. I think it's about being really honest about imposter syndrome. I still face it now. I don't think it's, anyway, my experience of it is not something that necessarily goes away. In a way, you learn to sit with it, accept it, and actually use it as a source of motivation for yourself. So I absolutely did experience that. But actually, what I found was quite helpful is also reflecting on when you start a new management role. Yes, you might be feeling anxious, you might be feeling that imposter syndrome, but actually, those new supervisees that you may have, or the new people that you might be leading, similarly can often have similar anxieties. So just kind of having those open conversations in supervision, whether it's with your the social workers you're supervising or even with your own manager, can actually be quite helpful and quite freeing. I'm quite keen on kind of putting it out there really and saying this is really new for me. And actually, I know this is really new for you. Let's talk about how we're feeling about that. And actually, that can in itself really help that feeling or that tension in the room. But again, I'd go back to as a new manager, and it might be even one of my points, having a mentor, having someone that you can speak to that has similar experiences, or has gone through something similar, because you will have times where you'll supervise staff and come away and just actually that was really anxiety provoking, that was really stressful, and you need to have the opportunity to offload with someone as well.
So the importance and kind of, supervision, and even in a leadership role, ensuring again that kind of safe space to kind of talk through things. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Got a question that's come through from Lalana. Thank you for sharing details of your podcast and your ebook. Are there any other books, articles, resources, etc., that you could recommend that we can read to help us grow our knowledge in leadership, innovation, and social work in general? So yeah, any kind of resources I think that you can identify for people that have been good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, my go-to are often sometimes social work books, but actually not always social work books. I think for me, I think they come under like self-help books, I think are the areas for me. So like I said, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway for me is a fantastic book. Atomic Habits as well by, I can't remember his name, James something, I think I can't remember his name, but Atomic Habits, if you Google it and that comes up, that's fantastic. In terms of, for me, more so leadership and creating positive habits for yourself. Start with Why. That's a really good book for innovation, I would say. Just really thinking about the why, your purpose, and why you're doing it. Again, I can't remember the name of the author, but it's another really fantastic book. The Right It. That's a book that we got on the innovation program, actually. And again, that's a really fantastic book when looking at innovation, developing ideas. And actually, that really gave me insight in recognizing that it's a long process developing and innovating an idea. And that process, that book really kind of talks you through that process. And yeah, it's a really good one.
Brilliant, thank you. Just come back to your podcast. I'm just curious as to what you found most enjoyable about doing the podcast from your own perspective. What have you enjoyed?
Um, I love it. It's like my passion project. What I've enjoyed about it is being able to speak. The guest episodes are my favorite because I get to speak to social workers doing so many amazing things in the profession. And I think social work, especially at this time with the issues around recruitment, retention, it can feel like quite it can feel yeah, a really difficult place to be at times. But actually, it just gives me so much hope because there are so many social workers who absolutely love what they're doing, who are doing some amazing things and that have so much hope for our profession. So I leave every single episode feeling re-inspired, re-motivated, and that for me is the biggest part of it. So yeah, that's what I enjoy. And I also, for me, it's a bit of my CPD because I'm also learning sometimes about things that I didn't know about. I had someone speak about different parenting assessment methods that I'd never really heard about before. So for me, yeah, it's another opportunity to learn as well. So yeah, those are the things I enjoy.
So it sounds like it's a really kind of positive space for people to talk about the great work that social workers can do and the change that we can make. And
Yes.
and so you being part of that, it sounds like you something kind of ties in with your passion, doesn't it, for social work in general? So it sounds really positive. But
Yeah.
um, thank you so much, Kyrene, for your presentation today. I think it's been really enjoyable, and hopefully everyone's learned a lot.